Hello again, another video. All right, in this video I'm going to talk about the interview assignment. And this is kind of your first major paper for this semester. This interview assignment, again, this can be found in the modules. The assignment for this can be found on the assignments tab. And this can also be found in the files tab. All the information is exactly the same. It's just different places you can find it. All right, so when is this due? This is due Sunday, February 10th on Canvas by 11:59 p.m. So that's Sunday going into Monday. The length is about 1,200 to 1,400 words. So that's about 300 to 400 words per video or per interview. You're going to be interviewing 3 different people. It's 10% of your final grade. You need 3 sources, which are your 3 interviews. The citation style will be MLA. If you need to cite anything by any chance, you don't necessarily need to do any outside research, but that's what you're thinking about there. But you should cite the interviews themselves, and that's a fairly standard citation style. If you SVSU uses Purdue's OWL as a style guide, and usually kind of helps. If you just Google OWL Purdue. You can even Google OWL Purdue MLA, and you can find the interview citation styles in that sense. So if you don't remember how to do that from English 111, that's a way to actually kind of, refresh your memory and find those. Document design, 12-point Times New Roman or Calibri, 1-inch margins. I'm gonna sneeze. I was sniffling in the last video. Here I am about to sneeze in this video. Acceptable file types. Just Word docs, RTFs, and PDFs. Don't submit Google Docs. As easy as they are, I know I love Google Docs myself. Canvas and just the permissions for using Google Docs is a little funky sometimes. So it's too much hassle to chase down students to try to get them to allow me to access their Google Docs. Sometimes there's just like a little hiccup there, so I don't accept them. All right, so what are you doing for this assignment? And again, I'm just reading this, so I'm kind of split screening here. And I'm reading just the assignment description itself, so it might sound repetitive if you've already read it. You will interview 3 different people inquiring about their perspectives about what excites, scares, and confuses them most about the techno future. These 3 people should clearly be from different generations. In other words, you cannot interview 3 of your close friends whose ages are near your own. Ideally, you should aim for someone who is much younger than you, at least 10 years younger, someone who is around your parents' age, and someone who is around your grandparents' age. That way you get 3 good different perspectives. You cannot interview me for this assignment. I have students ask me that all the time because they're like, oh, sweet, I found one person to interview. No, not me. You should ask permission to interview these people. Don't assume they're going to help you out, even if they are your parent. Maybe they're super busy at work or, they don't feel comfortable doing this. Just make sure you get their permission. You should also think of at least one backup. Saying that your interviewees didn't respond is not an excuse to not complete this assignment. Be prepared for that possibility that someone might not want to help you out. Okay. This interview, and I have some sample questions later in the assignment description. I'm just going to talk through a little bit of the assignment itself. This interview can be done whenever and wherever is most convenient for you and your interviewee. It can be done in person, at home, at a public location, via Skype, email, phone, text, whatever. However you want to do this, totally fine. I do recommend that you draft a list of questions in advance and share them with your interviewee in advance if possible. That way they can think about them. Being asked questions for an interview on the spot is really tough. If you've ever been on a job interview, you know how difficult that is. So this is going to be kind of tough to ask them, without providing them the questions in advance. I think that's just a responsible thing to do. The questions you decide to ask are your choice, depending on your interests and the people you choose to interview. You should, however, take the time to explain what we're discussing in class. It might be helpful to briefly explain your own personal definition of techno futures. You might accomplish this by giving examples from our class or examples from movies or TV shows you've seen. All right. When you're drafting your list of questions to ask your interviewees, you might consider the following ideas. You're not limited to these questions, but you must ask the same questions to each of your 3 interviewees. That way you get different responses, or maybe they might be similar, from all three people. Okay, so these are different categories of questions. So questions about the person's experiences and opinions. Now we have a couple, like I said, a couple different categories of questions. You might pick one or two from each category. That way you have a lot of meat to work with when you're writing up your essay. But let's talk about the questions first. So, what was technology like for you growing up? Are there certain technologies that are now obsolete? When you were younger, what did you imagine technology being at this point in your life? Do you consider yourself an early adopter, someone who wants to participate or buy the newest technology as soon as it comes out? Do you consider yourself a wait-and-seer, like someone who wants to see, well, is this going to be worth my time? I'm not going to buy it yet, or I'm not going to, use it yet. Okay, questions about what excites your interviewee about the techno future. Another category. In your lifetime, what do you imagine will be the most important technological advancement you'll see? If blank was developed, I would feel like I was living in the future. In your lifetime, what has been the most exciting technological development you've witnessed? All right, questions about what scares your interviewee about the techno future. What makes you nervous about technology? What changes have you witnessed, for better or for worse, with technology? And describe a situation in which you felt uncomfortable using technology. Questions about that last one, I should say. This runny nose, it won't go away. Sorry, gross. Hi, Barkley. Questions about what confuses your interviewee about the techno future. When I hear people discussing blank, I immediately get confused. Describe a situation in which you encountered using a new technology for the first time. What was it like? And it seems to me that everyone enjoys blank, but I don't see the purpose of it. So there are a couple, fill in the blank ones, not necessarily questions, but those are really good ones to kind of get your interviewee talking. All right, once you have finished each interview, make sure you record your own reactions immediately afterwards. You'll need them in this paper. So you might say, wow, I never really thought that they would respond in a certain way, but they did. This is what they said, and I'm shocked by it. So you want to record your own reactions. Okay, so once you complete the interview, type up a summary of this experience, including with whom you spoke and why, and the comments you found most interesting. Be sure you share a brief self-reflection on what you learned as a result of this experience. Be aware of how much quoted material you're using. In formal essays, if you use quotes, you should aim for an equal amount of analysis. So if you use a quote from your interview, you want to make sure, let's say it's 1 or 2 sentences, you want to follow it up by talking about that quote for 1 or 2 sentences of your own writing. This interview essay should not be full of quotes from your interviewee. It should be a balance of information from your interviewee and then information from you analyzing it. You should keep track. This should keep you on track for limiting quotes. Instead, summarize the responses you found most interesting. Your summary must be written in paragraph form. So what I don't want in this essay is question, answer, question, answer. That's not how you should write this essay. You really need to take the time to actually kind of summarize and really put into paragraph form the interviews themselves, the results of those interviews. If you list a question and a response, you will not have success on this paper. On a separate page after your essay, please list all the questions you asked and the names of the individuals you interviewed. All right, and on the assignment description, I have 2 different frameworks for how you can set up this interview essay. So framework A, you have an introduction. You have an overview of the questions you asked in your interviewees. You don't list every question. Just kind of say, oh, I generally asked about their fears of technology, or I generally asked about what excites them about technology, something along those lines. Don't list every question you asked here. Those questions are going to be at the very bottom of your paper, remember? And then an overview of the interviewees. You can just say, I chose to interview so-and-so, who is this many years old, this other person, who is this many years old, and this other person who chose not to give their age, but I'm going to put them in this age range, whatever. Something like that. And then you would go into your different interviewees, a review of interviewees A's and responses to the questions you asked. Interviewee B, their responses. interviewees see in their responses. And then the conclusion, your own reflection about what you learned about these interviews. Framework B is a little bit different, very similar but different. The intro is the same as Framework A. The conclusion is the same as Framework A, but the middle part is a little bit different. So you might break it down into 3 different question groups. So you might say, I asked questions about what scares them about technology, I asked questions about what excites them about technology, and then I asked them questions about what confuses them about technology. And you can put all the different responses from each different interviewee in those 3 different paragraphs. So as opposed to breaking them down by interviewee, you're breaking them down by question type in this different framework. And I'll be using the English 212 rubric, which is at the very bottom of the syllabus itself. I'll be looking for consistent use of the same questions across all 3 interviews, and I'll be looking for thoughtful reflections of your own following the interviews themselves. So that's our interview assignment. If you have any questions about it, let me know, and I'd be happy to help. All right.